Hi, it's Anna. Thanks for tuning in. So today I want to discuss specifically the topic of effort and discipline on this path, because there is this very popular narrative that um, this path doesn't require any effort, any work, to the point where people are actually allergic to those words. They think, these words are separation consciousness. Um, and, the words work, effort, discipline. And this is a very popular narrative that is very misleading. And in my opinion, that is actually geared to keep people in passivity and apathy, um, so that they don't actually make any progress on this path. So, in a nutshell, this path requires effort. It requires so much effort. This path was actually called the Great Work by quite a few great ones, quite a few spiritual initiates that came before us. The Great Work, that's the spiritual path. When I did my video recently titled Intuition Isn't Enough, Questioning Ourselves is Key, I mentioned that, in all ancient texts and scriptures, it all discusses the fact that it's actually a very difficult path that requires a lot of effort and a lot of discipline. There is this image or this analogy that I quite like, that is the taming of the wild horse that I used in that video. And in my opinion, it actually explains this path so well. This path is about slowly shifting from the ego will to the spiritual will, so that we are connecting more and more spiritually, consciously connecting more and more spiritually. Um, and it really feels like a taming of the ego at times. It really feels like that. It's very difficult, especially when you start initially, right, on this path. We all the same. We all start this path typically when we fully embedded into the matrix and we've reached our limit. I haven't met anyone who's actually starting this path uh, from a place of joy. Usually, you've reached your limit, you've reached a level of pain that's just no longer sustainable, that's actually waking you up to realizing that there's a problem and I need to work on it. And that's what usually leads you to start the inner work, right? It's called inner work, it's called shadow work. Um, the purpose of this video is to try to bring back the definition of terms, um, so that we come back to what they actually mean and we don't fall into the trap of completely dismissing words, and completely going down an incorrect path. Because unlike popular belief, like there is no, like, the path is not whatever you want it to be. The path looks different for different people, obviously, because we all navigate we all navigate it individually, so it's going to look different. But there are there are rules, to the path, for lack of a better word. So initially, when you start on this path, it's going to require a lot of effort, because you're actually going against, not only against the grain of society, doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing, but you're going against what's been so deeply embedded into you, all these habits, right? And these patterns and this behavior. To go against that requires a lot of effort, a lot of energy. For me, at the beginning, when I started, and I knew that I had to start with meditation and mindfulness, even the process of meditation was so difficult for me that I had to break it down into just 3 minutes a day. 3 minutes a day for me was manageable, and so that's how I started. Every day I made it a non-negotiable that every night before bed I would do 3 minutes of meditation. And then little by little I increased that to 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. But it requires so much discipline, because you're so used to all these ways of being, these ways of thinking, and these ways of behaving, that to change that requires a lot. It's the same with whenever you need to go on a diet because you've got various addictions, right? It requires a lot of effort. And you cannot get onto that path without effort. This effort is also due to the fact that when you become conscious, you can't just stay conscious 100% of the time. It's a muscle that you actually have to build. And there is a pressure trying to prevent you from becoming conscious. Like I said, it's your own lower ego, all these habits, creating this heavy pressure, preventing you from rising, right? But also, there is this concept that Gurdjieff called the Kunda buffer, which is like an oppressive force, which is due to the fact that we live in a collective consciousness that's deeply asleep. So you are affected by the collective, and the EMF that soup that we all swimming in is probably not helpful. And like I said, there's also different narratives online that are also not helping, telling you that you don't need effort, and it's to me it's akin to actually going back to sleep. So that's what I want to really focus on today, and I want to start with actually defining those words. So let me read this that I found online. Effort and discipline are essential qualities for achieving success. Effort refers to the amount of physical or mental energy put into a task to achieve a desired outcome. It is crucial for persistence and skill development, enabling individuals to overcome challenges and reach their goals. Discipline, on the other hand, is the ability to maintain focus and consistency in the face of obstacles. It involves self-control and adhering to plans, which is vital for long-term success. Together, effort and discipline create a powerful combination that supports personal and professional growth. Effort drives action, while discipline sustains that action over time, leading to lasting achievements. In summary, while effort is about the action taken, discipline is about the consistency and commitment of that action. So, on this path, it's a path of becoming. We are slowly letting go of the ego wheel and slowly coming into the spiritual wheel. We are slowly bridging the gap through evolution and growth, from the ego to the soul and to connect with spirit, right? And so there needs to be a momentum going. There needs to be a momentum going. And I've mentioned before that it's not that this path requires it's not effort in the sense that it's push, grind, to-do list, step-by-step process, having to have a morning routine, waking up at 4 a.m. It's none of that. That's toxic patriarchy, right? But in the because we are seeing that this way is not correct and it's harmful, a mistake is to actually completely reject those words instead of purifying them. So we shouldn't be swinging from this toxic patriarchy to this other feminine society where it's all about being. We need both being and doing. We need to come into an equilibrium within. We need to purify all of that and come into a state of balance. Doing, forcing, pushing is not healthy, and that's where we all end up in burnout. But by the same token, just being and being passive and just being who we are as a spiritual being and just not really doing much is also harmful. And the narrative that you don't need to do anything, you just need to remember, you need just to remember who you are, and it's very misleading and it's very dangerous, because this path, I'm sorry, requires so much effort. It's actually an insult to say that it doesn't, and it's a lack of reverence and respect for everyone, all the great ones who have come before us. How do you even think that you know better than ancient scriptures? So we need to reject these types of narrative, and we need to understand that it's not because we are rejecting the aspect of effort, of discipline, that comes from lack of self-worth, or comes from, I don't know, an unhealthy view of success, that we actually have to reject those words completely. Those words have meaning. You just need to purify the meaning. You need to align the meaning to your soul development, to the soul striving to connect to the higher guidance, to the spiritual will with a capital W. The will with a capital W is motion. There is a momentum that needs to be gained on this path. And whilst the path ebbs and flows, and there are absolutely times of rests that are very important, actually, because so much actually happens during those times in terms of assimilation, there needs to be an ongoing forward movement. And you're going to feel it. You're going to feel that there's an ongoing forward movement. It might not always look like taking action in the external world, but there's a lot happening inside of you. Effort in the sense that, effort is your commitment to the path. Effort is every day I'm going to tune in and see what's happening, and I'm going to effort in terms of I'm going to choose to listen to my guidance instead of choosing what my lower ego wants to do. Effort and discipline in terms of having a devotional commitment to truth with a capital T. I've done a separate video on this. And the thing is, what I've noticed is that, like, this will that I'm talking about, the spiritual will, we're not born with it. It has to be birthed, it has to be developed and refined. It takes years of this effort that I'm talking about. It's a building of a muscle. You're literally building the spiritual will. It's not going to happen by being passive. But it's also not going to happen by applying the lower ego understanding of effort. But there's nothing wrong with effort. And so, even though at the beginning, like I said, of this path, there is a psychological effort that absolutely needs to happen, the further you go on the path, the more it becomes the spiritual will that I'm talking about. It's a big muscle that you basically build. And so it doesn't feel like effort anymore. It feels like flow. It feels like, but it's not that it's not effort. It's just that it's who you are now. Because as we evolve into higher and higher levels of consciousness, a person with a high level of consciousness is a person that's very matured, that is disciplined, that is taking full responsibility for their life, that will actually have financial freedom. They will not be able to rely on others for financial freedom or financial provision. And that's just how it is. So you become that person, right? You become that person. And so even though to someone else it might look like actually it's a lot of effort, because you're still so committed to the path and you're still doing this, you still actually at higher levels, it looks like service. It looks like coming online and sharing and continuing to share even if nobody's watching. So it doesn't feel like effort at this point, because that's literally who you've become. You've aligned with your spirit. You've become that, and the spiritual will is so strong, right? But it's still effort. There's nothing wrong with that word. Willpower is the source of self-transformation. You can't transform yourself, which is what this path is all about, right? This path is not about a to-do list. It's not about doing a set of tasks and forcing things. But it's using that willpower to transform yourself within. There needs to be inner shifts that are physically felt, intrinsically felt within. And I think the problem is that there's this notion that the soul, or like the monad, or however people call it, is just this blob of energy that's just already perfect. But that's actually not true. And you will feel it as you proceed on this path, that the more you align with soul and spirit, the more you feel this will and this energy. You have so much more energy. The soul is striving, like the essence behind the soul and spirit is not immobile, it's not lethargy, it's not passivity. There's actually striving and momentum and motion. It takes effort to, face the truth and face yourself and not run away from it. It takes effort to continue to hold the responsibilities that you hold as you are on this path. I've done this path raising 3 little children. And one thing that I've noticed for myself as well on this path is that even the process of surrender has been active. It was an active process of surrendering because my ego didn't want to surrender, my lower ego at times. And so even the process of surrender is an active effort of surrendering. But it's not just trying hard, it's a spiritual discipline that awakens you, purifies you, and elevates you. So that's what I wanted to say today. As human beings, the whole point of being here is to evolve and to grow. And we evolve through this self-directed effort that I've mentioned. We don't evolve through passive belief, or we don't evolve just by remembering who we are. That's just such a small fragment of the path. It's not the entire path. So yeah, if you are on this path, if you truly want to be on this path of true self-transformation, true vertical progress instead of looping, instead of horizontal confusion, which is not, really progression, then you do need effort. You do need discipline, but not in the sense of the matrix, not in that sense. In the sense of the effort is a commitment, it's a determination to do what's needed, to constantly tune in to your intuition, to constantly work on the work of purifying, to constantly observe what's happening in your life, to do the relational work with others in your life, all of that stuff. It requires effort and it requires discipline. We are a seed that must grow. We are not already that. We must grow to connect with it so we become co-creators. That's what I had for you today. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.